The video you are about to see has never been seen by the public.
Oh my God!
It was shot 20 years ago by FBI surveillance specialist Rick Sutton from the 25th floor of the Bureau's New York headquarters.
I heard the noise. I was standing about right here, and I heard the noise. I looked out the window. All I saw was a big, huge fireball coming out.
The voices are those of Specialist Sutton and other FBI personnel.
Nobody sees what hit it? Well, on CNN, they're saying that it was a plane. So what happened to the plane? The plane, it could be lodged on the inside. Oh, inside? Yeah. That had to be suicide. How could you, unless the plane was out of control? Unless no way you can hit that right in there. Nah, I mean, look, it's a clear day. You know people lost their lives. You see up there on the right side, somebody waving something? Oh my God. They have to break the windows out.
Look at the people waving the white flag. This is a fucking tragedy in the making.
I think they'll be okay. They'll probably get out there. It's just those people that were on the floor where the plane was.
No, but they can't get down from there, Rick, and the fire. Oh, man, the other one blew up.
I see that.
Holy shit, another one.
Oh my God! The other building blew.
The other one just blew up.
The other building blew. Both of them.
Holy shit.
Look at him.
The other one blew up.
I mean, it was a terrorist attack. It had to be.
Holy shit.
What, it just blew up? It just blew up.
Blew up.
Just like the first one.
Hey, guys, how about getting out of here?
Yeah. Everybody to the ground.
Huh? Guys, maybe we should get out of here. What do you think?
And this building could be wild.
Get the fuck out of here, Rick.
At this point, Specialist Sutton is forced to evacuate, along with the entire Bureau. The FBI office at 26 Federal Plaza, the largest in the nation, empties. It is 9:12 a.m. Despite losing their command center and virtually all their resources, these FBI agents must mobilize now. September 11th, 2001, is primary day in New York City. Public schools are just starting a new year. The Yankees are on a roll and will host the White Sox that night.
I was driving down through the city and I was singing along to the radio.
I was just approaching to enter the Lincoln Tunnel.
Well, I was sitting at my desk at 26 Federal Plaza. I heard a huge explosion. My secretary started screaming, "World Trade Center."
I saw this black smoke billowing from the North Tower.
They interrupted the music to say a jetliner had just crashed into the World Trade Center.
New York has seen nothing like this since 1945, when a B-25 bomber accidentally flew into the Empire State Building.
And it was like, hit the siren, throw the light up on the roof, and jet down Broadway.
My phone rang in the car. It was my boss, Barry Morn, who was the assistant director of New York at the time. And he said, "I'm going to the scene, meet me there." So I made record time, going down the West Side Highway, red lights and siren. The streets are teeming with panic and people evacuating. It's a very chaotic scene. My purpose was to get into the lobby of Tower 1 because that's where I was told the police department and the fire department were meeting as their kind of initial mustering point. I grabbed the first police officer I could. I remember saying to him, "Hey, guy, where's the mobilization point?" He said, "Pal, I have no fucking idea."
One note of concern here at the FBI already, their field office in New York is located very, very close to the World Trade Center.
I saw a huge Ryder yellow rental truck parked in front of the building. And I said, oh my God. And we know the history of Ryder rental trucks when it comes to truck bombs and, IEDs.
It was a Ryder truck that exploded in the underground garage of the World Trade Center 8 years earlier.
26 Federal Plaza is not safe at this time. They didn't know if it was a target, if it was being targeted. We all had the same goal, and that is to get out.
Everyone in the FBI office is immediately forced to abandon their desks, leaving behind computers, files, secure phone lines, virtually every tool they have to do their jobs.
Attention, please. This is the Fire Safety Director of 26 Federal Plaza. I repeat, all employees in the building.
And all the agents are unnerved. What did we miss? Could we have prevented this?
And from all directions were your peers, your FBI colleagues. It was at that point we were instructed to go to the playground in Chinatown, and that was our rally point for head count.
The FBI has only a loose contingency plan for disasters, and the New York office is already facing huge demands. Locate and organize its agents, rescue as many people as possible from the towers, and launch what they know will become a massive investigation. But as they try to do all three simultaneously, minutes are ticking by.
And the building was groaning louder and louder. It was like the building was crying. As you looked at it, it kind of rumble after it made its left sway, right sway. And it got louder and louder, and the ground was moving. And it made a slight, heave up, almost as if it was taking its last breath.
And all of a sudden, you can just hear this huge kaboom. And I could just hear each floor dropping.
The ground just began to shake.
If the New York office hadn't done a roll call that took the time it had, the agents easily could have been inside the crash area, if not inside the tower itself.
What happened? It collapsed. The top floors collapsed down. I saw it blow and then ran like hell. Thank God. I'm 69, but I can still run. There's got to be firemen trapped back there, though.
I just remember staring at it, and all I could say was, oh, the World Trade Center's gone. Both of them are gone. It was empty space. When it settled, you could hear in the background the chirping that was so loud from their World Trade Center. Almost like cicadas in the summer. Except with a mechanical pitch. It was the trackers on the firemen. It's the sound that the protection gear makes when the fireman stops moving.
The world is in shock. New York is paralyzed, and the FBI, whose mission has only become more urgent, is in disarray. Agents are unable to communicate with or even locate each other.
Instinctively, it turned and started running up Vesey Street, and I ran to where my office was. My secretary, I don't think she recognized me. It was like everyone else. We looked like, you know, zombies with all the white dust on us. I went into the bathroom and, you know, cleared my airways and tried to clean up my face and hands as best I could.
A group of FBI agents had commandeered a, you know, brokerage, I think it was Morgan Stanley or somebody, had an office across the street from the Trade Center. Recognize the technology then, telecommunication technology was much different. There was a phone bank of like 6 or 7 payphones. Had a cop stand by the phone so no one used them. And we opened up lines. I'm talking to Washington, and I said, what's going on there? And they had the bad report that the Supreme Court had just been hit.
It is becoming apparent no one, anywhere, knows what's happening. The only thing that's clear is the New York office of the FBI must find out who did this.
Debris is falling from the sky. All of the buildings in the immediate area were being evacuated. You have to have a nerve center. We had to have a location, and we had to have one very quickly. So I was given the assignment to find a suitable forward command post.
We're not going to go any place which is identifiable as being law enforcement or the FBI. And I said it had to be large enough to house a lot of people. I want it secured, and I want it fairly close to ground zero. The agents, they reluctantly said, well, we could go to the 26th Street garage.
At first, I was actually thinking, how the hell is this going to work?
I was a little bit skeptical. It's not going to be ideal.
The 26th Street garage is the greatest untold story of 9/11. We made the decision to walk to the 26th Street garage. And as we were walking over there, we're still seeing hundreds, if not thousands, of people still moving their way north. But also, we saw hundreds of boats coming from New Jersey over towards Manhattan, trying to help people get off. And it looked like Dunkirk. That's when we first started hearing the military jets. I knew that it was war. When we first got there, SWAT was setting up command and control and securing the area with razor wire. They were arming those of us that were outside to set up a perimeter. We were given long arms, so shotguns and MP5s and MP10s, which is looks like a little machine gun.
I remember walking up the ramp.
You know, you could smell oil and smell brake fluid.
Opening the door to just massive space.
It wasn't so much the smells that bothered you, it was the visual.
The garage, where the cars are, where you get your oil changed, where the fender's hanging off, where you get the side light replaced. It's hard to imagine that this was going to be the epicenter of the investigation.
As agents arrive on foot by the hundreds, FBI logistics teams make space by towing out 500 cars.
It was a grease monkey location, but, you know, ugly's okay. No one's looking for, you know, the Waldorf Astoria in the middle of a crisis.
FBI teams are scouring the city for office equipment and even buying it on their own credit cards.
People trying to put tables up so people would have somewhere to work, get computers in there.
They had a number of tables lined up with folding chairs.
They set up the computers. They ran the lines.
Banks of telephones, miles and miles of wire.
And it actually looked like a big haul of spaghetti. I mean, there were wires hanging from all over the place, but they were necessary because regular phones weren't working.
It was just logistically an overwhelming undertaking.
As we were now seeing the 26th Street garage take its form, it was almost like an FBI baby being made in the womb, because everything that the full-grown FBI mechanism had downtown was now coming to form. It was getting legs, it was getting arms, it was breathing, it was starting to stretch out. There were different areas for the bosses to sit, for management to sit, for the case agents to sit.
Incredibly, within just a few hours, the garage begins to function as an FBI command post.
The purpose of the garage is not only just to act as a communications channel, but to digest all the information coming in. The manifests for the planes, they were obtained fairly quickly from the airlines and started to be vetted out both through agency files, FBI files, and getting multiple hits on these subjects.
On 9/11, one of the passports of one of the hijackers was found a block or so from one of the towers in the debris, and that was brought into the command center. So you were fairly early on, were identifying who the hijackers were, but you wanted everyone else.
You know, we photographed everything, including aerial mapping, photographs of all of Ground Zero. All of that information was funneled back to the garage.
I was involved with a lead group. Any information that they found in the investigation, whether it be the passport, the flight manifest, any information that the lead investigators wanted followed up on or needed, the lead desk would pass out a packet. You know, like Mission Impossible, you open it up and there's a picture of an individual, and in it would be how they were associated with the case. They could have been in Muhammad Atta's address book, or it could have been, this is a number that one of the hijackers called 15 times in the first week. So we would go out and pay a visit to that location.
The Boston office had found a briefcase at the airport, and it had some information as to what they were going to do.
A handwritten letter was contained in Muhammad Atta's briefcase that was basically a declaration of, we who are about to die for the cause remain strong and resolved. It was that type of rhetoric to sacrifice their own lives for the purpose of freeing up the Arabic world from the great Satan, the United States. And that same letter was recovered in Shanksville during the crime scene search, and it was a third copy of that same letter found. So that was really a key piece of evidence that, linked all of them together as well.
Clues are coming in. Names are going up. Charts are being made. Whiteboards are being drawn. Lines are being connected.
And so that was broken down initially in a handwritten whiteboard, but then as information was refined and identified more specifically, then it was memorialized in writing in charts, which served a very useful purpose in terms of comparison of one flight against another, who was together, who wasn't together. Once we had the connection between the actual hijackers, to now begin the process of doing a complete vertical, a dissection, if you will, of that human being, their entire life, where they were born, where they were raised, where they went to school, when did they come to the United States, where did they stay, pulling reams and reams and reams of phone records and financial records. How did they operate here in the United States? How long were they here?
You were able to see the fruits of your labor. You were able to see all the information that you were bringing actually come to fruition and form. You were seeing links being made based on work you had done.
The 9/11 investigation is already becoming the largest and most complex in the Bureau's history. It's all hands on deck, around the clock. At the same time, the New York office is also responsible for thousands of other cases, and they can't be dropped.
It didn't matter if you were on a Russian organized crime squad or working the Gambino family or you were following Russian spies. You had undercovers out there whose lives were on the line that you had to worry about. You had handlers that needed to be talked to. You had victims that needed justice. It's very hard to tell an FBI agent, you need to switch this other thing off.
My shift, for example, was 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Nobody got days off. There was no days off. We had a job to do. We were going to do it.
You didn't want to leave. You wanted to just never pause from the work that you were doing. And you got the greatest comfort from being around literally hundreds and hundreds of people who felt the same way and were doing the same thing with that level of commitment.
After an 18-hour day, I had a lot of difficulty falling to sleep. That is when I would stop and think of what had occurred, what the losses were to firemen, police, and that caused me a lot of anxiety, stress, just thinking about all that.
It's not the kind of work you can walk away from. A lot of people, for a time, were working day and night because the stakes were high on both sides.
As agents frantically begin to unravel the 9/11 plot, another major threat emerges. The second wave of attacks may be coming.
You're thinking, we've got to solve this case. That's synapses firing, years of habit. That's what they'd been raised to do. But it was also crystal clear that they had to stop the next thing. What was the next thing? Where would the next thing be? Is it possible that it could be bigger or worse?
We're all concerned, was this the tip of the iceberg? Was there more to follow?
You had the Pentagon attack, and of course, the plane that went down in Shanksville, Flight 93. So that's 4 major attacks all in one. What's to say there aren't 5, 6, 10, 12?
We have to find out whatever there is that one can find out, so that if there is another plot on the way, whether today, tomorrow, next week, next month, we stop it.
The clear assumption by federal lawmen is that these terrorists had help from accomplices who may still be in the United States. What is not as clear is whether those accomplices were only bit players in this historic assault, or whether they may still have still-to-be launched terrorist plans of their own.
As the dust was still rising, there were 2 different mindsets. There was a brand new FBI director. His name was Robert Mueller, and he was a very exacting manager. He asked 1 million questions.
Right after the World Trade Center attack, Robert Mueller came to the garage to see me. First to you, the director of the FBI, who will subsequently introduce the Attorney General, but we are all very pleased and honored to have the director of the FBI, Bob Mueller, here.
A morning meeting with Director Mueller in the days after 9/11 was not just a morning meeting, it was a cross-examination.
This is a group that you can see turn this parking garage into a huge command post. And
so when you kind of think of that personality, the ability to run that case from headquarters for somebody who wanted to be that hands-on was the way he was leaning.
You should know this is a great, hard-working group. They've been doing it every day without a day off, working 12 to 16 hours a day. And he said that he was going to take the investigation back to Washington. With that, ladies and gentlemen, the director of the FBI.
Despite the fact that thousands of leads are coming into the garage and agents are working them as fast as they can,
3 weeks ago, we were all doing something else.
the entire operation is one administrative decision away from being shut down.
And within 24 hours, you all pulled together, 28 agencies.
I argued against that. I said, Director, you cannot run an investigation out of Washington if you don't have investigators.
This disaster has produced any number of heroes.
He said, I am aware of that, so I'm going to take half of your people down to Washington, D.C., which I argued against.
So many heroes out there that we ought to applaud.
But he was the director. He was my boss. And he said, that's the way it's going to happen.
He made that decision despite our best effort to convince him not to.
And we will bring these individuals to justice. Now let me introduce the Attorney General of the United States, John Ashcroft.
New York had real strong feelings about this. There were too many people dead. There was too much history. And there had to be an element of, we feel responsible for this as well, and we need to make it right. When you think of the New York office of the FBI, we did the World Trade Center bombing. We did the case of the Blind Sheikh. We prevented all these other attacks. We know all these players. We've prosecuted them in court. We've obtained conviction. They're all doing life, and we don't want something this important to be handed off to a bunch of people at headquarters.
By the morning of September 13th, the garage is fighting two battles. One against the terrorists, another to keep control of the investigation. And it's determined to win both.
They couldn't get together between Fort Meade and Langley and the J. Edgar Hoover building. But then when you went into that space at the garage, who was there? NSA, CIA, FBI, NYPD, the Defense Department, men and women from 16 intelligence agencies, and all the information was on the table. They could literally yell it across the room to the next guy. All there, doing it the way they were supposed to do. They couldn't get it together in Washington, but they could get it together in that garage.
More than 25 agencies begin working together. They are outrunning Washington and determined to keep going.
So many others want to thank you for the extraordinary response to this extraordinary act of terror.
FBI Director Robert Mueller concedes the team in New York will continue to be a major driver in what is becoming an all-consuming investigation.
Now, let me introduce the Attorney General.
I was pretty frightened when I first saw the building with the new occupancy.
Martha Stewart's studio and test kitchens are on the 9th floor.
There was the razor wire. I remember looking up and seeing guns hanging over the rooftop. You could see the guns clearly over the parapets. This was warfare. I thought, well, either we're a target or we are protected. And it was terrifying and yet comforting at the same time. You knew who they were when they got in the elevator. They were packing a weapon. They were extremely serious about their jobs, but friendly. There were lots of people on that floor, very busy with computers and telephones ringing, and you can imagine what they had to they were trying to figure out who the heck did this.
The volume of leads coming in, the trite expression, drinking from a fire hose, we were drinking from fire hoses from every fire department in the nation, it felt like. It was a flow that would not stop. And keep in mind, it was coming in not only from New York, but all over the country, all over the world.
I thought, God, these poor people working round the clock. And I felt so sorry for them because there was no place to buy food. New York was basically shut down for a while after 9/11. I thought, well, maybe they'll allow me to bring down everything that we make in the test kitchen. Why not give it to these hardworking people who are basically living on the second floor?
So one day, Martha Stewart is coming up the ramp, and she said, I just want you guys to have something. It was a standard size, round birthday type of cake, layer cake. And she said, I just really appreciate all you people, what you're doing.
So we would take down food and see the smiles and the weariness of the workers there on that floor.
Everybody thanked her. And she didn't try to decorate the garage either.
I would have loved to have made over that garage. I probably would have made them some lounges where they could have some kitchens where they could eat. I would have probably put better lighting in there. It was a pretty dingy place.
You have to have some humor to get you through these awful events. They keep you sane, So Martha Stewart was very, very nice.
As we were finding out about all of the skyjackers, our thought at the time is we have to identify all of them and their links.
So part of the installation at the garage was these secure classified phone lines, and they proved to be vital. It would ring several times a day, and I'd be on the phone with Ali Soufan, one of the agents who was assigned over in Yemen.
On 9/11, I was in the embassy in Sana'a investigating the USS Cole.
Less than a year before 9/11, the USS Cole, an American destroyer, is refueling in Yemen.
The bomb was carried by a small boat that helped the destroyer moor in the harbor.
A tiny fishing boat, the men on board waving and smiling, pulls up beside the destroyer and explodes. The bomb rips a hole in the side of the warship, killing 17 American sailors and nearly sinking the Cole.
You see the attack on the USS Cole. This is critical because you start to see a picture come into richer focus. Who are the people who blew up the Cole?
Oh, there's another one. Another plane just hit. Right, oh my God, another plane has just hit. It hit another building.
We were trying to call headquarters and see what's going on in New York. And they basically said, you need to stay. And I was really annoyed. I mean, you want us to stay? The USS Cole can wait. We're under attack. And the answer from headquarters was, it is not about the USS Cole. It's about what just happened here. You go to the embassy and so will give you what you need to know.
We started to identify a number of the individuals that were on the various planes. As we developed that, we were able to send those names over to Ali Soufan, who was dealing with jailed extremists.
I went with my CIA colleague in his car back to the embassy. We go to his office, and he gave me a manila envelope. And I opened it, and I could not believe what I was seeing. Khalid Mihdar and Nawaf Hazim, who were connected to people who were involved in the USS Cole, had been in the United States. They were identified as hijackers. 2 people who were on the planes. We're looking for them in Yemen. Our government knew that they were in San Diego.
What Ali Soufan has just learned, but no one in the garage yet knows, is that the CIA has been tracking 2 of the hijackers for nearly a year. The CIA, however, had yet to process the information, and so failed to share it with the FBI in time to locate the hijackers.
I just threw the file back on his desk. The only thing I can do is just get out of his office, straight to the bathroom across the hall, and puking my guts out until one of my colleagues came in and said, "Buddy, you okay?" And I remember I just looked at him and said, they knew everything.
The CIA would also acknowledge failing to put the Al-Qaeda operatives on the terrorist watch list sooner. Days after the attacks, the Yemenis revealed that they are hiding something extraordinary.
When he walked to the room, he won't even look at me. He literally took his chair and turned it towards the wall.
Ali Soufan is brought to meet a secret prisoner, a terrorist whose alias is Abu Jandal.
So he won't even recognize that I'm a Muslim. He didn't believe me. But a little bit by a little bit, the relationship was a little bit better. He started lecturing us a lot about Islam, about the world, about bin Laden, about revolutions.
The reason the Yemenis have been hiding Abu Jandal, he is Osama bin Laden's bodyguard. Soufan shows Abu Jandal photos of the World Trade Center attacks, but he adds a lie, that hundreds of Muslim Yemenis died in the towers.
Those people were on the planes that hit the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Those people murdered all the Yemenis. So he was totally taken back. He put his head between his hands and he started shaking and he said, I need 5 minutes. So we went out the room. We left him in the room and I walked in again. And then he said, I think the sheikh went crazy. What do you want to know? I said, we have a photo book. Some people probably you know, some people I'm sure you don't know. He identified Muhammad Atta. He identified about 7 people who later were identified all as hijackers, giving us their nationality, their aliases, and a lot of details about them. That was significant. This is the evidence we needed.
Bin Laden's bodyguard has now given the FBI absolute proof connecting Al-Qaeda to the World Trade Center attack.
We understand that it's really important to pass this information to New York. Kenny, it's Bin Laden, 100%.
When those first clues in Yemen and Abu Jandal's revelations to Ali Soufan come into the garage, you know, the people who are piecing together everything from everywhere say, okay, this is big, this has meaning.
7 of the hijackers were identified as Qaeda operatives by the bodyguard.
The breakthroughs that occurred in those interviews was really putting the key into the lock of the secrets of 9/11 and turning it. Abu Jandal was that.
Turning to what's now a sprawling criminal investigation of the coordinated suicide attacks, investigators have made quick work of identifying the skyjackers.
So Abu Jandal was identifying people left and right, and all the information was coming straight to New York, and New York were acting upon this information, putting wanted posters for some individuals that we identified, and following on a lot of the leads that we were generating.
The board became a lot more refined as time went on, as more information came in that we could permanently affix up there in terms of a flow chart.
You wanted to get back after you did your leads and write up your investigation and document it so that the case squad could have that information as soon as possible. Because something you're holding may be a missing piece, and you don't know it. You don't know what you have. They know what they need. This grind went on for like 60 days before a day off, which is, it was okay for me because I was in the zone. I wanted to be with my peers. I wanted to be with other FBI agents.
The leads from 9/11, which is opening entire new books into Al-Qaeda that had never been cracked before, including the recruitment of English-speaking people to come to flight schools.
In terms of, connecting the dots, who are these people who flew the planes and how did they learn to fly? With whom were they associated when they were in the country? We realized pretty quickly there's an awful lot of flight schools that can teach you to fly a commercial airliner. And of those flight schools, a lot of them had a lot of Mideastern males as students.
We need to know what else is happening. Who else is involved? Who else is a sleeper cell somewhere, waiting for the instructions to attack?
Pull back, pull back. All the way up into the green bar.
The thing that struck me so odd when I went into the garage was that I smelled like gas and oil and rubber and all the things that, would typically find in a garage. And you're among, all these computer terminals and FBI people setting leads and covering leads.
Leads are pouring in from all over the world, but one of the most critical comes from inside the FBI itself.
We had been pushing to our management in Minneapolis to let New York know we had a subject who had to be connected to the attacks. When I got to New York, I immediately went to the garage ready to brief agents and prosecutors on Mr. Moussaoui.
Zacharias Moussaoui is a French citizen. He has been in flight school in Minnesota until weeks before 9/11. When the FBI is alerted to his strange behavior, agents arrest him on immigration charges.
Zacharias Moussaoui was taking flying lessons, but it raised concern by the instructor is that he just wanted to know how to fly. He really didn't want to learn everything there was about manning an airplane.
This revelation about Moussaoui is conveyed to Ali Soufan over in Yemen. Soufan runs it past bin Laden's bodyguard.
Abu Jandal identified Moussaoui. Basically, he gave us a lot of things about him, his involvement in Al-Qaeda, his alias in Al-Qaeda. Now we know that this person wasn't only a crazy guy who said, I want to learn how to fly, but I just want to take off. I don't care about landing. This guy is actually a member of Al-Qaeda and worked for Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan.
Realizing the terrorist network in the U.S. is larger than anyone imagined, the FBI puts even more pressure on Moussaoui.
Mr. Moussaoui was hostile. We could tell he didn't like us. We were going to go for broke on this interview. And so we said, we're aware that you're a member of a group. When he heard the word group, that really concerned Moussaoui. His eyes kind of got wide, his jaw dropped.
That also fed our concern as to, were there others out there, potential hijackers and/or potential support elements that would create a second wave or create other incidents.
I said, Mr. Moussaoui, you're here with us in custody, and you're going to remain in custody, but your friends who are out there who are going to carry out this attack, they're not. And if people are hurt, you are going to be held accountable by the United States government.
Everyone was in a high state of alert. When's the next attack? Obviously, we didn't prevent this one, but can we prevent the next one?
The urgency, for sure, was in identifying co-conspirators. Was it identifying anybody who might have been working with Moussaoui to do the same thing, who might have been financing him, who might have trained him?
Was Moussaoui going to be used in a terrorist plot after that? I am sure he was. They didn't send him here for tourism, right? They sent him for terrorism. But again, he was arrested before that happened.
That was very, very important in terms of establishing a real concrete connection between bin Laden, al-Qaeda, and the hijackers as well.
We're working day and night. We're interviewing people left and right. You know, we're getting significant amount of information. It's very important to pass it to New York.
However, some of this intelligence is difficult to interpret. In particular, the agents struggle with intercepted al-Qaeda phone calls about a mysterious figure linked to the attacks, but still at large.
When there was all this chatter, and part of the chatter was this guy Mukhtar, which was believed to be somebody that was involved, but didn't know who he was.
To chase down this lead, Ali Soufan flies to a secret prison in Thailand. He interrogates a captured bin Laden associate named Abu Zubaydah.
We're hearing about this اللي مخه طار, the one whose brain flew away. All the time, اللي مخه طار, اللي مخه طار. I'm like, who is اللي مخه طار? Who is this guy whose brain flew away? Maybe he's bin Laden, because he went crazy after 9/11 doing something like this.
Soufan shows Zubaydah photos of known terrorists trying to trace the al-Qaeda network from the bottom up. But Zubaydah is stunned.
So he said, please, brother, don't play games with me. This is Mukhtar. This is the one who did the plane operation.
The FBI analysts have been mishearing the name. Lee Mukhtar is actually Mukhtar. And Mukhtar is Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, someone the FBI thought they knew well.
I was like, whoa, Mukhtar, اللي مخه طار. I was totally shocked, because honestly, at that time, we didn't even know that he was a member of al-Qaeda.
In an instant, Soufan makes a stunning connection. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is the uncle of Ramzi Youssef, the mastermind of the first World Trade Center attack in 1993.
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, before joining al-Qaeda, came to Abu Zubaydah, and he wanted to do an operation in the United States targeting the World Trade Center to follow up with what Ramzi Youssef started, destroying the buildings. And his plot was to rent Cessna planes and fly them into the two buildings. Abu Zubaydah's response was like, so you break some windows, at least fill these Cessna planes with explosives so they can do some damage. So KSM liked the idea. But Abu Zubaydah told him that the only person who will have a capability like this is Osama bin Laden.
What he had done is he had taken all of Ramzi Youssef's plans and kind of blown the dust off them and brought them to bin Laden and said, they're still good plans. We could still do bad things. They just need the money behind them. And that was the genesis of 9/11.
I know New York will be very interested in KSM. So I called on a secure line Kenny, and I said, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was identified as the mastermind of 9/11.
I briefed Barry, just hung up with Ali, and here's what he's provided. Those details were put up on the board.
The board is finally complete. There is now a clear line from the original World Trade Center bombing through Khalid Sheikh Mohammed to Osama bin Laden and the 2,978 murders on 9/11. Our enemies are about to face the consequences.
On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan.
It was the best time that I ever saw where law enforcement came together as one.
Good evening. It's 3 months to the day since the murderous attack on America, and a U.S. grand jury has issued the first formal criminal charges in the case. Attorney General John Ashcroft calls the 30-page indictment of Zacarias Moussaoui, quote, a chronicle of evil.
That humble little building on the West Side Highway was housing the most complex, important, largest investigation in FBI history.
An extraordinary confession from the suspected mastermind of the 9/11 attacks. According to the Pentagon, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed admitted responsibility for 9/11 and for a string of attacks and plots, including plans to kill Presidents Clinton and Carter.
What was accomplished out of that garage was nothing short of amazing.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda.
One by one, the United States dealt with those responsible for 9/11. Zacarias Moussaoui pleaded guilty to conspiring to kill Americans as part of the attacks. He is currently serving a life sentence without parole. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind of the attacks, remains at Guantanamo Bay. His trial has yet to happen. What began as an improvised response to an emergency evacuation yielded extraordinary results.
And that was not just figuratively, but also quite literally the start of something. It was a new model.
The structure that evolved in the 26th Street garage is known as the Joint Operations Center. In FBI parlance, the JOC. And it has become the template for counterterrorism activities. Agencies cooperate closely. Intelligence is shared quickly, and there is constant vigilance.
I look at that warehouse, and I realize its whispered role in history. There's no sign, and nobody really knows what happened in there.
What went on after 9/11, it should forever be here that the largest investigation in the history of U.S. law enforcement, if not international law enforcement, was run from this very rudimentary, grease-lidden on the floor, oil-slicked garage. It's just an incredible feat, it really is.
And all the memories of the garage, both stressful but also enlightened, like hopeful. It was all the best of everybody was here in the garage. It was the investigators, support, the people.
And that's what was so great about, you know, everything in the garage was just work and trying to solve this, you know, most heinous crime of ever, right? I mean, it was just unspeakable, really. But everybody just sort of put aside the unspeakable and got it done.
Putting aside the unthinkable and getting it done is what FBI agents are trained to do. Now, after 2 decades in Afghanistan, American troops are out. The threat based on history came true. Government fell in an instant. Taliban seized control. We're never going to eliminate terrorism in our lifetime, just like the FBI's mission never ends. They'll regroup, find new sources, and stay ahead of the terrorists as they have for the past 20 years, preserving our safety in an increasingly complicated world.
One Sunday, I was walking up the street near my house. There was this little church on the Upper East Side, and I remember walking, and you know, they were singing hymns. You know, I was like, they're happy. And they should be. They should be not. It's okay to be joyful and sing in church. And I remember feeling like taking a minute and sitting outside and listening to the hymns. Because it was, I think, the first time I was reconnecting with New York. First time I was seeing my fellow New Yorkers, you know, being New Yorkers and singing. I am, you know, and they were joyful inside the church. So for me, it was rewarding because it was like, it's okay, you know, humanity is here. It's gonna be okay.